It's a good day to speak out against evil. This June 14th, 15th, and 16th, or roughly when I'm recording this, there's a conference going on in Orlando, Florida. Several outspoken pastors have gathered there, promising to expose the filth of reprobates, and in their words, they'll be talking about queers, homos, and sodomites. They've chosen to make this their cause, and they have no idea of the irony of some of their statements. Leading up to this conference, Pastor Tommy McMurtry said, "People need to understand what it means to be given over to a reprobate mind, and we're going to send out a reminder next week of what it's all about." There's an obligatory line about pumpkins when you mention that guy. I hope someone posts it in the comments below. It would be really cool to get any comments at all on my first video here. There are unprincipled, depraved, immoral reprobates, and they'll be the ones in front of the crowd spouting filth. As an example of the filth that we can expect, I'll quote Pastor Steven Anderson, who's going to be speaking at the conference. The Pulse nightclub shooting was 3 years ago on June 12, 2016. After it happened, he said, and I quote, "The good news is that at least 50 of these pedophiles are not going to be harming children anymore. The bad news is that a lot of the homos in the bar are still alive, so they're going to continue molesting children and recruit people into their filthy homosexual lifestyle. They like to say that they don't advocate violence, but they praise violence, they celebrate violence, they stop just short of asking people to carry out violence. They also say nothing to condemn violence aside from it could lead to support for gun control. The downside of the Pulse nightclub shooting, according to Steven Anderson, was that people survived and someone might want gun control." Now, his tacit approval of violence aside, there's the matter of his labeling people pedophiles and rapists. Do a little experiment right now and open up a new browser window. Just search for the number of rapes that occur in the US every year. Now try to look up the estimated number of LGBTQ people in the USA. I'm sure you'll find that you need to give some absurdly generous assumptions for them to all be rapists, like every instance of rape being a different person, and many of them never even getting around to raping anyone. Pick any Western liberal democracy where there's rule of law and some reasonably reliable figures, and you'll find pretty much the same thing everywhere. Of course, there are some places that are in some serious denial, and those numbers will just be way off if they're one of those places that claim that they don't have gay people around or whatever. If you're one of those people who goes down to Pride to protest, to try to do some soul winning, stand up for Christ, share God's love, or however you want to put it, take a look at the crowds while you're there and think about what you'd do if there were that many pedophiles, rapists, and evil, immoral people in your town. Personally, I'd be really scared. So if someone wanted me to think that they genuinely thought that LGBTQ people were monsters, they'd better be doing that from a bunker surrounded by death traps. There's no way that someone who thought there were that many evil people around would be going around in public. If the reprobates giving talks at the Make America Straight Again conference had any respect for their audience, if they cared about the truth, if they valued honesty, They would be clear in telling you that the vast majority of the people they're speaking out against will never harm anyone. And of the people that do harm others, the vast majority of those will probably be car crashes instead of something with any deliberate intent to cause harm. Instead, they've chosen to sacrifice the truth, show that they don't value honesty, and they don't respect their audience's ability to decide right from wrong. They've discarded their ability to see the world accurately because it got in the way of their obsession. I'm going to read some more from the transcript of Pastor Tommy McMurtry's promotional video. I'm new at this, so I'm not ripping his video to clip something to insert here. He says, "Don't be afraid of these freaks, all right? Listen, I understand they're animals, but, you know, there's only so much they can't do anything to you online, and most of them are too scared to do anything in person. All right, so don't worry about it." And I'm going to split this quote here because the next part is kind of long. The vast majority of people aren't going to do something to you in person because the vast majority of people just aren't bloodthirsty hate mongers. They're good, lawful people who recognize that the things that unite us are far greater than the things that divide us. I seriously hope that the worst that happens to anyone is that their boss comes around one day and tells them that the image the company wants for them is not one that's against the LGBTQ community, and hopefully things won't reach a point where they'll have to part company. I don't want to see anyone harmed. I don't even want anyone to feel threatened. It causes people to dig in, and then the ability to be reasonable just shuts down. Carrying on with the quote, one thing I've had to set my channel to where I have to approve all comments, and it's pretty funny because I have it set to where all the comments have to be approved because I would be fine with letting everything on there, but they're so nasty, they're so vile, they're not capable of talking without talking about sexually explicit things, and just using some of the most nasty words in the English language. They're not smart enough to avoid these things, and they cannot help but just spew their perversion all over the words there, and I don't want kids seeing it, and things like that. So they all have to be approved. None of them are going through, and yet they're continuing. I mean, I've had thousands of these comments come in. It's so funny. I just go through, I click the thing to mark all, I delete them all, but yet they keep doing it. It reminds me of just a bunch of, crazed dogs trying to get through a glass window. When they're biting at the window, they're not accomplishing anything. They're like a swarm of flies just flying into a window. They can't get through, yet they keep trying. And that's what you do when you're just a crazed dog, when you're just an animal, a bug, a brainless insect. You do that kind of thing, and you know what? Even though they know I'm not going to approve any of their comments here, they will leave hundreds, yea, probably thousands on this video because they're just vile dogs. So after insulting our courage, he insults our intellect, and now he's dehumanizing people. It's a classic propaganda tool. If you want to commit atrocities, you first have to establish your outgroup and dehumanize them. I'm not just saying that to be hyperbolic. to once again quote Pastor Tommy McMurtry's Make America Straight Again promo video. There was a time when society, when our country saw them for what they were, and they put them in their place 6 feet under. And unfortunately, we have forgotten that in our country. He is basically advocating government-instituted mass murder. And going back to Steven Anderson on the Pulse nightclub shooting, obviously it's not right for somebody to, shoot up the place because that's not going through the proper channels. But these people all should have been killed anyway. They all should have been killed through the proper channels, as in they should have been executed by a righteous government that would have, tried them, convicted them, and saw them executed. In a way, it's funny that we've both decided to speak out against evil, and we're in opposition to each other. To them, I'm a monster, or not to give myself too much credit, and to follow the previous analogy, I'm like a bug splattering on their windshield. In the words of Pastor Steven Anderson, it's evil because in Leviticus 20:13, God's perfect law, he put the death penalty on murder, and he also put the death penalty on homosexuality. That's what the Bible says, plain and simple. He also says, these 50 people in the gay bar that got shot up, they were going to die of AIDS and syphilis and whatever else. They were all going to die early anyway because homosexuals have a 20-year shorter lifespan than normal people anyway. And, at least these dangerous predators, these filthy pedophiles at this gay bar, at least they're off the streets, and so I'm just trying to look on the bright side. I imagine it would not be wrong for me to assume that from his point of view, it's kind of like a zombie apocalypse or some sort of plague. The world isn't this sort of dark place, and next time someone is repeating similar talking points, I hope that somebody speaks up.